Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello and welcome back to the Honest Health Podcast. Jeffrey Burke here. I am so glad that you're here. This is my new platform, bringing you the most up-to-date, groundbreaking information from some of the best minds within the natural products industry, as well as voices from outside the industry too. All of them with great messages, stories to share, because let's face it, everybody has something they want to talk about, and we can always benefit from a good idea. If you like what I'm doing, please consider giving me a like, a share, a subscribe, or better yet, do all three. I would love it. You're going to have a ball today. This is going to be fun. My guest today is Jacqueline Jacques, and as you can see in her description of the program, you'll see what an incredible talent she is. Help me welcome her to the program. Hello there.
Hi, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. I know that little jet lag's going on coming back from the event, but I was watching everybody's post and it looks like it was a good time to be had.
It was a great time to be had. VitaFoods is one of the biggest international shows for the natural products industry. There were around 20,000 participants there from not just from Europe, but Asia. I met people from as far away as Uruguay. So yeah, a great time to be had. And because it's this industry, it's always great people.
You know, it's so fun, because I love going to shows because I love meeting people. And it's funny, people always laugh at this, but, people have a tendency to bounce around in our industry a little bit. So as you're talking to people, you usually look at their logos to see who they're working with now. And it's always kind of funny every year. It's like, oh, that's where you are now. And but I'll tell you, we were talking just briefly before, and I think you said it better than I've ever heard it said before. You say, if you came into this industry with a purpose, most of those people are still in the industry decades and decades later. And I have to agree with that. I've never heard it said better.
Thank you. It's so true. I mean, I see that every time. In fact, especially when I go to a show, right? I walk around a show floor and what you said is also so true, because sometimes, especially if I'm introducing someone to someone new and I don't remember where you were working when I first met you. I just know that I've known you for 20 years, but just don't ask me where we first met, because it's like that, because people they do bounce around. But I think it's also true. I think, I love always asking people, like, how did you get here? Because I believe in this industry more than many others, people have a reason that they came to this industry. And if they're meant to be here, they find community here and they don't leave. It's very true. I know it was certainly true for me, but it's true for many, many of the people I know and have known for years.
And I do agree 100%. I come from a place where my grandmother was kind of an herbalist, self-appointed, self-taught herbalist, and I learned a lot from her. And then I started and worked part-time in college in a little health food store. I went in just kind of looking and being interested, and it just kind of developed from there. And I mean, I just love it. And, people all my age now are all retiring, and I can't even imagine. I'm too inquisitive and nosy about what else is coming and what hasn't happened yet. I want to be part of it. So
much good stuff still coming.
I think so. I really do. So what was it for you? I mean, what was that thing? That one thing or two things that kind of said, this is my path?
Yeah. I mean, I don't feel like my story is that dramatic, actually. I trained as a doctor of naturopathic medicine. And before that, I'd already kind of been moving into the space of integrated health. I had actually gotten a massage license when I was 18 and had worked doing Reiki and integrative body work and breath work. And so by the time I finished a degree in naturopathic medicine, and my intent was to be a doctor. That was what, you studied medicine. I'm going to be a doctor. I had seen a little bit of the natural products industry, but had never thought, I'm going to go work there. But then I had a baby, and my young family, we, for various reasons, moved from the state of Oregon, where I was practicing. We moved to Southern California. And at the time, in 1999, Southern California did not have a law to let naturopathic doctors practice medicine. So my options were going to be sort of being an assistant to someone else, or, trying to work quietly and, stay, below the vision of the law. And I made some different choices. So I joined the California Naturopathic Doctors Association to work on licensure. So I became an active part of working on the licensure effort in the state. I joined the fledgling board for the Samueli Institute at University of California, Irvine, which is now probably the biggest and one of the best known integrative medicine centers. They were only a year old when I joined there. Were much, much, much smaller, but I worked with them. We actually wrote the regulations to allow naturopathic doctors to work at the university, which was pretty amazing. And without really knowing what I was doing, I started a consulting company in the natural products industry. I just said, well, there's this industry and there's a lot of it here, and Natural Products Expo happens here in my backyard, and I'm going to consult. And I promise you, I had no idea what I was getting into when I did that. But I very quickly found a real home for myself. At the time, so much was new. This was 26 years ago. There was a new set of laws. There was DSHEA, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, was only a few years old. And there was a pretty strong need, if you found the right places to work, to help really bring a higher degree of education, of substantiation, and everything else that I had really learned in school to formulation. So I ended up working mostly with contract manufacturers and sort of in between them and brands, because the contract manufacturers so good at what they did, but they had PhDs and chemists, right? They didn't have people that actually knew the difference between putting, 10 milligrams of turmeric in something and 500 milligrams of turmeric in it, right? So we were very young in the industry at sort of doing what we take for granted now of, our formulation styles. Everything has changed. Most things back there were proprietary blends, and it just looked very different. So I did that, and I never went back. I honestly never went back. I came in and started doing this work and met so many wonderful people and learned so many things, and realized that I could really apply all of my education to this space and still be helping people heal, but at a very different level of healing. And I'm still here. So here we are.
I love it. No, that's a beautiful story. You said it wasn't a big, that's a huge, huge story, and an amazing amount of energy and put into there and following a path. My grandmother always said, and she said it every time I saw her, there are no coincidences in life. And I think she said it a million times. And, I never really believed it until I got older, and I just realized that, there was a lot of truth to that. And I think that we end up where we're supposed to end up, and if we can bring our passion with us, then we're doing something right. So that's amazing. But you're right, to your point, a lot of changes, the change in formulation and changing in our sourcing and the change of the delivery systems that are now available today. It's amazing.
Also, just the sheer number of companies, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
if you walk yourself back 25 years, right, you really could go to a show and meet everybody and know everyone. And now it's exploded, in part because of the work that was being done at that time, right? So it's been a pretty wild ride if you've been around a while.
Absolutely. And to that point as well, I love the way we're going. I love change. And, I did never used to like change, I guess, when I was younger, but now I like it because usually change means that something is better, or it's more absorbable, or it's more effective, or there's science now and there was guessing before. And, and I do like that. I mean, most people have things that they enjoy. I enjoy PubMed. I mean, I like reading studies, and I nerd out on those. And to me, that's really good because it gives me, more substance to be able to talk about and refer to. So it has really dramatically changed. Bigger size, more companies, and every which way and then loose than that we have available today of getting these supplements into our bodies effectively.
Agreed. Very much so.
I was talking with someone the other day, and we were having this great conversation, and I would love to have it with you about the relationship between the medical community and the natural products community. And I referenced that the time. I'll do the same now. I remember working in 1981 at a health food store in Westwood, California, and right by UCLA. And I was there doing inventory one night and there was knocking at the back door. And I said to the manager, I said, "What's that?" And she goes, "Oh, it's just the doctors. They come to the back door after hours to get their vitamins." And I went, "No way."
What?
So of course I stopped what I was doing because I had to see this. And they were coming in and they're like, it was like a drug deal. They go, "You got it ready?" And they go, "Yeah, I got it ready." So they gave them their vitamins in the bag. And I'm like, "What?" And they're like, their colleagues didn't want their colleagues to see them in the front of a health food store. So they would come after hours to get their vitamins. They said, little did they know, most of them were doing it. They just didn't want the other ones to know. So there's a different way the philosophy was back then. And it was kind of cool and faddish back then to take vitamins. And, and today it's hands down necessary because we messed everything up and we're ruining our health and well-being and we're terrible to ourselves. So how do you think the relationship is now?
Yeah, it really has changed, right? I mean, I remember when I was a naturopathic medical student was when Jonathan Wright's clinic up in Tahoma, Washington was rated by the FDA for B12, right?
I remember.
And that wasn't that long ago in the scheme of things, right? I mean, it was a very memorable moment, and it was really shocking for a lot of us who were preparing to come out in the world as doctors of thinking, are we going to be okay? Is this going to be safe? Is this going to be something we can do? It's changed a lot. Like, I don't even know how to say it. There was actually, it's interesting because I was reading this paper not that long ago. There was this recent survey that was published, not going to remember the journal right now, but 2023 data that said that currently 72% of physicians take dietary supplements for their own health. And that is a massive shift, right? We've seen generational increases in use of dietary supplements, like from, say, my grandparents' generation to my generation to my kids' generation, and just increasing acceptance. And within that, physicians are also consumers, right? They're part of that same generational change. So just that, to me, is fairly profound. That says a lot about acceptance. That said, we still have a huge gap to be closed in the knowledge that physicians have in terms of the training they actually receive in school related to nutrition, related to dietary supplements, related to botanical medicine. Like, why shouldn't they be getting pharmacognosy along with pharmacology, right? It's the same course of study, but it's still a big enough gap that most physicians, even though we just said the vast majority of them are taking supplements themselves, they're still uncomfortable speaking about them to their patients. And so that is probably the next gap that needs to get closed, is one, in education and training, and two, in making space for that conversation to happen between physicians and their patients. There's a lot that needs to happen for all of those things to occur, but I think we are in a much better position for those changes to happen now than we were 20 or 30 years ago, just because it's so clear that the majority of the population is incorporating natural products into what they do for their health. So I feel like it's coming. I feel like we still have some big gaps to close, but it's so much closer than it was in the days when we were like arresting guys for using B12 in their practice.
Boy, isn't that the
truth? It was
truth?
not that long ago.
I was in, where was I? Nashville. And I was just there recently, and I was in a store, and this lady came in and she says, "I've never been here before, but my doctor sent me here." And I love that. And she had a piece of paper, and I was just like, I was in the section, so I wasn't helping her. He wrote omega-3, methyl B complex, probiotics, digestive enzyme with ox bile. He had it written out.
Wow.
And a plant-based multiple vitamin. And I'm just like, who is this doctor? And she goes, he's kind of new. She said, but my other doctor told me to take nothing. She goes, but I feel terrible. So I thought it was wonderful. So I said to the lady at the store, and she goes, we are seeing so much of it now. Yeah. Handwritten prescriptions coming from the doctors. And I was overjoyed. I loved it.
It's very telling. And I think so. I think we're really starting to close that gap, right? I mean, even think about, it's not as good of an example, but think about pharmacy, right? Like you were telling me before we started here, you got your early start in industry working in natural food stores, right? And that was what you had, where you had to go to get vitamins, right? Like, I mean, I grew up in the early days where we had either some local family-owned natural product stores, or we had Mrs. Gooch's, or we had, these places. And that was where you went to get vitamins, right? They weren't available anywhere else. I mean, maybe actually, I remember like from my childhood, you could get Flintstones. And there was this little bottle that was shaped like an orange that had vitamin C. That was like what you could buy at the grocery store, right? But you couldn't get anything else. But now, my regular grocery store, right, and my regular commercial pharmacy actually has a pretty robust selection of natural products, right, mixed in with conventional OTC medicines. Like that's another huge shift. It just means that the number of people seeing natural products on a shelf has wildly expanded from people having to go to specialty stores to see them. And that doesn't even bring in what happens on the internet, right? I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
Social media has shifted all of these things tremendously.
I saw a meme the other day, and it says, we're finally at the time when the kids of today will take a Flintstone vitamin but have no idea who the Flintstones are. I had to laugh. I mean, it made me laugh. It was so funny. But
I feel sad. I feel sad and old when you say that.
Instantly, both. But I got to tell you, we have come a long way, and I love that we've come a long way, and I love that people are really searching out companies that are transparent.
Yeah.
I've never really been a big advocate of a proprietary brand label. I never have been. To me, and it's fine if you have it. I probably use some products that have it on the label still because I take so much. But the thing is, if I'm going to use something, I want to know what's in it, what I'm getting, what the dosages are. And a proprietary blend, in case you're not familiar, is basically like a paragraph. And it's got all this list of all this stuff that's in there. And then it may say 1,500 milligram proprietary blend, but you have absolutely no idea of anything that's in there. No dosage, no milligrams, nothing. And I don't like the guessing game. I really kind of like it laid out for me. So for me, I think we're seeing a lot more labels that are clearer, easier to read. And I think that's part of the change and the progression toward transparency as an industry.
I agree. Definitely. Yeah.
And like I said, we have these wonderful changes. We have the change between the medical and the holistic and the natural products industry. That's been changing. The actual face of the industry is changing a lot with new techniques and new delivery systems. What else is changing to me that I think is really important is the diet. Our diets have changed dramatically. They found a way to make the worst, unhealthiest stuff in the world taste really, really good. So we're actually asking for our food drug of choice, so it's terrible for us, but we crave it. And, when you're sick or depressed or you're celebrating or you're drowning your sorrows, you don't reach for broccoli and carrots. You reach for, pizza and ribs and ice cream and chips and stuff. We reach for the things we shouldn't be eating, but the diet has changed. And even though we know better, even though we hear about the Mediterranean diet and we hear about intermittent fasting and we hear about, high protein, low carb and, and really eating healthier and watching what we're doing, I still think it's moving slowly in that area. And I think a lot of us are guilty.
Yeah. I mean, it's complicated. That sort of sums up a lot of it, right? In some ways we are in the same position with food and diet that we are but on a bigger scale that we are with natural products, right? We have more of everything, and it's more available than ever. And there are cases, I might upset people by saying this, but it's okay. I'm going to just say it. There's cases in which more is not better, that more choices are not better, that more options are not better. There are times for that. And it very much goes against a lot of people's sense of being American, right? Being American, part of our inner fiber is freedom of choice. But there might be a limit to that when it comes to our health. There could be, throw this out there as an idea for everyone to think about, if you actually had fewer choices, for example, when you went shopping, and they were just fewer, healthier choices, it would be probably easier to eat a healthier diet because you would see the things that, were better for you all the time. Now, I don't think we're going to go there anytime soon, but I think you're right in that we've had so many generations now of increasing availability to foods that do more to kind of satisfy us, or in not a nutritional way, but in sort of an immediate gratification way. And we've lost along the way a lot of people's understanding of where food comes from and how food is, brought from a farm to a table and what processing does to food. And so much of that knowledge has just been lost, along with people's knowledge of how to prepare food. Like, okay, I'm going to tell a story because this is maybe just a thing that helps. But I remember I had my own supplement company for a while, which you may not know about me. So I actually co-founded a company back in 2002 called Bariatric Advantage, and we were doing nutrition for people who'd had surgery for the treatment of obesity. We were the first company in the world doing that, and I ran around the world and taught surgeons about nutrition. So I got a lot of the inside of some of these things. But we built a really smart, wonderful team of employees, and one of my favorite employees was my head of IT, who was just a young computer genius. He was amazing. And we hired him right out of college. He was like 21 or 22 when we brought him in there, and, shining star with what he could do. Anyway, we were at a show in Vegas, and I took him out one night because he had never been to Vegas. And I'm like, I'm going to take him out and show him some fun. And we were sitting in this little bar and having drinks. And they had snacks on the bar, right? And one of the things they had were like cornichon, like little pickles, right? Little cornichon. He was snacking on this. He goes, God, I have to tell you, I love pickles. And he was just talking about it. I'm like, why do you love pickles so much? He's like, well, pickles remind me of cucumbers, and I really like cucumbers. And I'm like, you do know that a pickle is a cucumber, right? And he's like, no. He thought I was telling him a joke. And I'm like, how can you be this smart and not know that this food started as this? So not to use that as an example, but just say that, like, even people who are really well educated don't really necessarily know where their food comes from, right? So we're missing a whole link that used to exist, right? Like, I grew up, my grandfather had pistachio groves and orange groves, and like he had 4 acres of land, out a little ways inland from where I am here in Southern California, where he grew, he was actually a botanical chemist. So he grew all these plants, and we grew up with food plants all over the place, but most people don't. Nope. And they haven't for a long time. And so people are very detached from food. And so that's kind of a roundabout way of kind of getting back to the question I think you were asking, is like, how do we get, from this place where we are, where it's hard for people to necessarily even identify that they have an unhealthy diet because they're so separated from what food actually is and what a healthy diet actually is. I think we have some serious work to do to make that happen. And I think some part of it is going to just be, really educating children to eat well and educating, people to learn how to cook again and those kinds of things. Because we can't just expect that, passing laws to eliminate 1 or 2 or 3 chemicals from our food system is going to be the thing that fixes it, right? I think it's going to take something much more sweeping to get back to real health.
And, it's our relationship with food.
Mm-hmm.
My great-great-great-grandparents had farms, and they would go out in the morning, like 3 o'clock in the morning, start working the fields. They'd come in about 9 o'clock, and they would eat this gigantic meal. They would rest for an hour, and they'd go back out, and they'd work till almost the sun was going down. They'd come back in and have another huge meal, and then they would sit on the porch and do their thing, whatever. That was their life. And the thing is, they didn't eat food for pleasure. They ate food because it was replacing the energy that they lost during the day. It was a way of rejuvenating the body and putting everything back in. Today, we do everything around food. We can't have a conversation. We can't just meet somebody to meet somebody. We have to meet somebody for food or brunch or coffee. We have to do everything around food. I mean, we're sitting down at Thanksgiving planning Christmas dinner. I mean, we do everything around food. And the more that's available for us to know about it, the less we're responding to really making it a priority. If you go around the world, people look at food differently than we do. I know they laugh at us because we make so much terrible food and we waste so much food in this country as well. And we don't eat healthy. I have friends that have moved to Asia. I have friends that have moved to Greece who had a completely out-of-body experience when they knew they had to walk to the village to get their food, because
Right.
they weren't real stores. It was like markets every day, and all of a sudden after a month or two they're losing weight and healthy, and they're like, oh my goodness,
Mm.
there's something to this food thing,
Yeah.
so it can work for you. So I hope we're getting better,
Yeah.
but we're fighting with huge gigantic companies that market everything to the taste buds but not to the health of the body.
At the same time, though, I do want to acknowledge the things that are positive, right? We've
Please.
seen some things like in my lifetime, the availability of organic food, for example,
Mhm.
has accelerated enormously. That to the point now where I can get organic eggs and things for almost the same price as I can get non-organic options. Like that is something that we should
Big.
acknowledge, that we've supported that industry enough that we have made organic produce, organic dairy, those kinds of things very accessible in a way that they never were. Or I've got some people in my family with celiac disease.
Mhm.
So gluten-free foods that are allergen sensitive. I mean, they were so hard to get. Like, I mean, gluten-free bread was terrible 20 years ago.
Yep.
It was terrible. Let's just acknowledge.
Bad.
Now, the availability of gluten-free pasta and gluten-free cereals and things that are well made, they taste good, they help people. So we've done some really good things as well that I think it's important to acknowledge, like where we have been successful. And now, to your point, we have to figure out how to rein some of this in.
And that was a beautiful point, and thank you for that. Sometimes I get wrapped up in the things that we're fighting against rather than celebrating some of the things that would need to be celebrated. So
Yeah.
it's very true, and they have huge. And now regenerative is starting
Yes.
to make a huge
I mean,
impact, and that's amazing. Celebrating the planet, and not just the
mhm.
crop, but the planet.
Yeah.
And the dirt and the soil. So there are some really good things that are happening, and to your point, kudos. Thank you for that. That was a
Yeah,
good
no,
point.
I think that to me is part of what's really encouraging, is to say we have made huge strides. I mean, you and I both we lived through organic certification becoming a thing that eventually actually got adopted by USDA,
Mhm.
right? And now it's regenerative, right? So like those programs didn't even exist. So
You know,
that's pretty encouraging on that side. So
when I go back to the Midwest, I'll go to my brother's place, and if his garden is in full bloom and everything's wonderful, I'll take a salt shaker with Himalaya sea salt. I'll go sit in the middle of the garden and I'll just eat everything I can reach, because it tastes different. I'm sorry. I mean, it tastes different when I'm picking it right from the dirt,
right.
and I'm just like, and my brother will just come out and shake his head at me and just like, really? And I'm like, yes, I'm enjoying. I'll eat till I'm full.
Well,
You
now
know,
you've been to Costa Rica, right?
I
Because
haven't been.
oh, what?
I
Oh,
haven't been.
okay.
I'm
Oh,
hoping to go end of summer. I'm going to go spend time with Rick.
well, when you
Rick
do,
Scalzo. Yeah.
right? When you do go, because I've been, so that's great. I don't even work for them, and I've been down to seeing the farms for Cocora and been there. But Costa Rica, like the whole country, is basically a food forest. You can
Mm.
just walk outside and be like, oh, okay, banana, like whatever. You can just like food is just growing everywhere.
Mangoes.
Yeah, just
Oh,
I'm not even gonna. You can't even understand it until you see it. But I mean, I didn't really understand the term food forest until I went to Costa Rica, and then I was like, okay, I now understand what this means.
well, people don't realize there's a lot of jungle areas down there. And, where Rick is,
A
when he does
lot,
my podcast
yes.
with me, you can see the jungle in back of him.
Yeah.
And sometimes during our podcast, you'll hear monkeys and toucans in the
Oh yeah.
background. I'm trying to get him to train a monkey to run across the screen and wave, but so far we haven't been able to do that. But
You
no,
may not want that.
I'm looking forward to it. I want to go. I want to actually, I've got a headset with cameras and stuff. I want to go down and walk the farm and walk the area so people can do a live and they can actually watch it and experience it with me for the first time. So
Yeah.
I think that'll be a lot of fun.
There's probably pictures of me somewhere like laying down in a field of passiflora there because I think I was like laying down in the passion flowers.
That just shows some of us people have been around a while. This passion is not going anywhere. We have a passion for and this connection where passion flower is my favorite out of all of the
My
things that
favorite.
grow down there. So I
Mine.
know that I will be spending a lot of time in the
Think
passion
about
flower
that plant,
patch.
right? It makes those magical looking flowers. It makes this incredible fruit. It makes all these incredible phytochemicals that help your mood and your sleep. It's a great plant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I love it. I think it's great. And I'm enjoying this so much today. I'm really enjoying having you
Oh,
here.
good.
Another area just I want to touch on. We have a little
Mhm.
bit of time.
Sure.
And obviously it's got a category of its own and it's become a little bit more visible, maybe a little bit more understandable, but I still think it's big. It's the mental health category.
Mhm.
And I personally think that the pandemic brought a lot of things that may have been behind the curtain out to the public, and
Mm.
people maybe are feeling a little bit more comfortable. And, you have to admit, I tell
Mm.
people all the time, I said, one of the best things we can do is never judge somebody dealing with this and just be present and be there to help them out and whatever they're needing, but people, it's hard to know because, I mean, we hear all the time about people, you see them, and then a week later you found out that they took their own life. And you're like, why
Mm.
didn't I not pick up on this? And, you know, I think that it's become an issue where I don't know what the resolution is. I mean, is it being more supportive? Is it being more present to people that are in our life and making sure our inner circles everybody's there when they need? I don't know where we go from this, but I see it getting worse, not better.
Well, I think some part of it is that, which is where you started the conversation, is that you see it now, right? So, I mean, even at the time I went to medical school, mental health was barely taught. And because it was something that only psychiatrists or psychologists dealt with. And as you're a physician, you don't, I mean, of course, no one wanted to, even naturopaths, right? We're not really teaching that your brain was part of your body and that your emotions were part of your body, right? That was maybe more part of our training than other people's, but it was still very separate. And mental health was not something that was ever talked about in public. It was like maybe whispered about. So having that kind of stigma around anything, makes it invisible, right? Makes it so that, it's not visible to you, it's not visible to the community, and it makes it very hard to know the extent of any kind of problem. And this is true of any disease that we stigmatize, right? I came out of the obesity space. Obesity is one of the most stigmatized conditions that we have. And when we stigmatize conditions, let's go back to mental health for a second, probably the people who end up doing the most stigmatization are the people suffering themselves, right? So people self-stigmatize, which means that not only do they not want to talk about their condition, they also often don't seek proper care because they don't feel like they should. So to me, I think opening up that door and making this a very public conversation, that makes it look like it's everywhere, right? So I think we may just have lifted the curtain on something that gave us more accurate visibility to it rather than there being more. And, it's going to probably take a while to sort that out. But I think that's probably more true than that suddenly we have way more mental health issues. I think we're just acknowledging them. We're acknowledging them in a bigger portion of the population and we're talking about it. And anytime you talk about something, right, it's just like sales, right? You sell what you talk about, right? So the minute we start talking about these conditions, we suddenly see the depth and the breadth of it. The next part really does have to become a conversation about what do we do. Like I think we have to acknowledge that on some level, we almost have to have a public health conversation about mental health, that we probably don't have the resources as a society to deal with 100% of this on a one-to-one basis between individuals and clinicians, but we have to start looking at a societal level and saying, what do we do in our communities, like to address mental health as a population situation rather than just as a one-on-one personal basis. And I think we're starting to move in that direction with that conversation. I actually feel like even at the level of government, we're having more of that conversation now of what we need to do. I'm pretty encouraged there in some of the progress that I'm seeing where we're starting to really, fund on a much bigger level programs for, say, mental health in veterans and things like that we were never giving funding for in the past. So again, some part of just ripping that Band-Aid off and making all of that visible, maybe the good part of that is that it lets us have the conversation that leads to treatment.
And we need to know there's a lot of Band-Aids to be ripped off in the world today. And
We have more.
you know,
This is not the end. Yeah, we got more
nah,
Band-Aids for sure.
absolutely. I really, really want to thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you.
I have enjoyed this more than you know. And I would love for you to leave everyone with a thought of the day on anything.
Anything with my jet-lagged brain today. A thought of the day is, remember that I think that the more that we take care of ourselves, the more that we are taking care of the people that we love, of our families, and also of our communities, and ultimately of the world. It kind of all starts with self-care and radiates out from there. So I think that's what I would leave people with, is just a reminder to prioritize taking care of yourself and let the good radiate from that.
Beautiful. I love it. I hope you've enjoyed this today. I've been speaking with Jacqueline Jacques today. Awesome interview. These are so fun because we want your friends to bring them here as well, because it's all about sharing. It's all about paying forward good information. And remember, if you like what you hear, make sure you subscribe at the YouTube channel. And the whole thing today, this whole platform is to give you the latest things that are great for your health and great for your well-being from inside and outside. And of course, all the breakthroughs in our industry, in the natural products industry. Thank you for being here today. What an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, will you come back and see me again?
I will. Yes, for sure.
We'll get you on a non-jet lag day. That'll be fun.
Yes, I love it.
I think you're brilliant. If this is you with
jet lag day.
If this is you with jet lag, I can't wait to see what you're like without jet lag. This was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.